Welcome to Love and Money with Barbara Treadwell, where we explore the deep connection between our money and the people we love. Good afternoon. On my Biohacking for a Long Life episode, which started a mini health series, I promised that we would have an episode solely devoted to food and nutrition. And I particularly selected Madeline Mills to help me with this episode. She's a dietitian who brings a fresh perspective and thought-provoking ideas to the conversation about food and nutrition and overall health. Maddie is highly credentialed. She has a BS in Food and Nutrition Science Dietetics from the University of Maryland, an MS in Clinical Nutrition from New York University. She's a certified dietitian nutritionist, registered dietitian, and certified personal trainer. She completed her clinical internship at the James J. Peters Bronx VA Medical Center and has a lot of experience working in New York City-based hospitals, as well as through her private practice, and you can find her on usenourish.com. So, Maddie, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I'm super excited to chat all things food and nutrition today.
Oh, well, that's a good question to start off with. How did you get interested in food and nutrition?
Absolutely. I think that from a young age, food has always been something that I loved and was interested in. Big foodie always. Going back to ordering at restaurants with my parents when I was 4 years old, I was the kid asking for the craziest thing on the menu. Was always an adventurous eater, always loved to eat. I think my mom growing up was a big reason of why I was interested in the actual nutrition piece. She always focused, on eating whole foods and being very balanced and making sure that we, she always said that food is fuel, food fuels your brain, and just making sure that growing up and going to school, we were always, eating our fruits and veggies and kind of trying to teach us some of the benefits of good nutrition as children. So I think that was really just instilled in me at a young age, which was a big part of it. And then as I got older, I think that, I obviously kind of was coming of age in the age of social media. So lots of nutrition messages and diet trends and all that sort of stuff was coming across my desk right from a young age. So I think that also kind of just got me thinking, and I saw that impact people in a positive way and in a negative way. I had friends growing up that struggled with disordered eating and eating disorders, and that was pretty eye-opening to me too, right? This tool that's so useful for, nourishing us. Food is everything. Food is life, right? So, and food is also culture, and food is, it's a social thing, but it also can be something that harms people's health and whether that's through chronic disease or mentally triggering eating disorders and disordered eating. And I think I found it fascinating. There's so many avenues of which you can think about food and nutrition. And I really just wanted to kind of dive in. Luckily, my college had that option to study food and nutrition, and I kind of just took it and ran with it.
Mm-hmm. That's a great beginning, especially with help from your parents.
Mm-hmm.
It could work the other way too. You could grow up in a house that did not have good nutrition and go in a different direction. You mentioned fiber and protein. What is more important? And on the subject of fiber, what is fiber diversity? How important is it, and how do we get there? That's a that was 6 questions in one. Sorry.
Not a problem. Let me know if I miss anything, but I'll try to hit on all of that. So I think the last couple of years, we've seen a really big highlight on protein and how important protein is. I feel like we're always talking. People are always asking me, how can I get my protein in? How do you hit those protein goals? And now I think fiber is seeing a little bit more of the spotlight. And I think that hopefully will continue because they're both very important. Fiber in particular, fiber diversity, I should say, is making sure that we're eating diverse forms and types of fiber. You remember the term like eat the rainbow? You heard that
Yes.
before? Yes.
Yes.
So part of that is for simplicity's sake, right? And to think about eating different colors of fruits and vegetables, you get different benefits, from the different antioxidant properties of the different colors, right? But also it's about eating a diverse diet, getting different types of fiber. And the reason I like to think that that's important, or the way that I like to explain it is that our gut is right populated with all sorts of different bacteria, beneficial bacteria that, create or that make up our immune system, that, create a resilient gut that helps us, digest food and all that good stuff. That being said, a strong gut, a strong, robust microbiome is diverse. We have lots of different types of bacteria doing different things for us, working together in symbiosis. That's if we have different types of bacteria, those different types of bacteria like to eat different things. So if we are, only eating broccoli, that's our only source of fiber. I mean, that's great. That's better than not eating fiber, right? But we're really only catering to that bacteria that likes to eat broccoli or likes to eat that type of fiber. So if we diversify it, different combos, some of the bacteria like to eat broccoli and spinach. Some of the bacteria like to eat beans and nuts, whatever it might be. We need to feed and cater to all of those bacteria so that they all stay healthy and robust. That's kind of the way I like
have
to.
never heard that before, and I've studied I've studied nutrition for a long time. I wasn't always healthy. I came up as an adult in the crazy 80s in New York City, and we partied hard and ate it whatever we wanted. We just weren't paying
Yeah.
attention to it then, but that brings up a good point. So this year you're 25, I'm 82. Do you pay any attention to what you eat now and how it might affect your health decades from now?
Definitely. And I think part of that has to do with, of course, my chosen profession. But I do
Yeah.
think that it's more of something that's thought about. In my generation, I do think people are starting to think about how their health habits and nutrition now will impact them moving forward. I think the two biggest things are, first and foremost, and this is something that I think is really important to think about as we age, is making sure that we maintain and build muscle mass. As we get older, that's more challenging to do. Naturally, right? We are just more susceptible to losing muscle mass. We're not as hungry. We aren't as physically active. We have a smaller appetite, like I said. Our body requires less calories per day, less energy daily to function than at a younger age. So with that, it's really hard to build muscle the older that we get. But we want to retain the muscle that we have, and that's incredibly important for functional independence, preventing us from falling, maintaining balance, staying strong. And I know we've talked about the importance of movement and keeping that muscle mass, as we age before, but it really is important. But that starts at a young age. Having the muscle mass to maintain starts young. So eating enough. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
No. And I'm on a bone remodeling protocol for 6 years now, and
Yeah,
I need the muscle to support the
exactly.
bone that I'm trying to grow.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
it's and that brings me to an immediate question, because one of the supplements which are recommended for muscle development is creatine. So let's talk about supplements as part of an addition to the food that we eat.
Yeah,
What's your
yeah.
take on it? I take so many supplements and I don't even know what's helping me, but I'm doing so well at almost 82 that I don't want to stop anything because something might fall off.
Exactly. Like,
I
don't want to
just,
touch
I
anything.
just don't, I mean, it just, it's working. And so I don't want to argue with it, but I am curious from an expert what your take
Yeah.
is on supplements.
My take on supplements, first and foremost, is that everyone is different.
Mm.
So, I know that you work closely with a provider who is, helps you kind of craft your supplement regimen. And I think that that's important. I don't necessarily think that there are many, everyone should take this type of supplements. Or, if there are reasons maybe not to, depending on your situation, your health, your lifestyle. So I always think it's important to check with a professional, or just run the list by, right? Like if you already are taking supplements, whether, run that list by your doctor or medical provider or dietitian, right? Just to kind of get a sense of why am I taking these things? Are they benefiting me? Are they harming? It's just important. That being said, I think that a lot of things, I say let's see what we can get from food first. A supplement is not meant to, it's a supplement. It supplements your diet. So again, there are certain reasons that it would benefit someone to take a supplement. But a multivitamin, for example, I think it's a great thing to have to support you and support your diet. But if you are focusing on fiber diversity in particular, which is, you're getting lots of different fruits and vegetables, you eat a very diverse diet, you're switching up what you eat every day, every week, likely you're getting a lot of those micronutrients that are in a multivitamin from your food with all the other added benefits of fiber, protein, etc. However, there are situations, right, where you can't meet that for whatever reason. Creatine, like you mentioned, there's a lot of great research and even more exciting research going on now. I was just speaking to a coworker who was at a conference that was talking a lot about creatine for women, especially, going through menopause and the benefits that creatine may have for that population. We know that it increases energy production in our muscles. We know that it improves muscle recovery and hydration. These are all beneficial things, especially, as you said, for building and maintaining muscle mass as we get older. I personally take creatine, so I like that one. So I think magnesium is one that a lot of people take. I read a paper a bit ago that was, suggesting that a lot of us have a subclinical magnesium deficiency. So whereas you don't really see symptoms of it, but it doesn't mean that we don't need more of it. So it actually benefits, helps with mood and sleep. Magnesium in sleep is kind of the big one. But it also may be helpful for migraines and things like that. So, that's a big one too that I see a lot of people taking. I think all of that to say though, and then you get like probiotics and omega-3s, and those are things that help support our gut health, and collagen, to support the gut lining and that sort of thing. Again, you can get a lot of things from food. So I'm always a big proponent of where can we incorporate foods that help us do this thing. But then recognizing too when the time and place is for those supplements to kind of help boost or help fill in those gaps. That's kind of a long-winded.
So it gave me a lot to think about, because I think that on the one hand, you're saying if something's missing, the supplement will replace that. Or something may not be firing as actively as it could, and the supplement will support it. So I think the thing you talked about in the very beginning is actually very important. I do have a functional medicine person who quarterbacks everything that I take, even the procedures that I have. And if you have someone like her or you, because some things are contraindicated. Some supplements don't work well together, and it can be a worse situation than a best. So I think probably out of this question, one of the most important things is to get expert help with it. You're on usenourish.com. That's how somebody can reach you, as Madeline Mills, and that's very helpful. I'm going to continue taking mine, but I I feel confident that what I have is okay for me. But like, I'm having a mini procedure and I have to stop taking everything for a week before. Honestly, I don't feel any different. But it's only a week, so I'm going to go right back on them as soon as the little mini procedure is over with. What about AI in nutrition? There's an AI tsunami going on right now. I was just recently in India, in the Tamil Nadu region, which is a very spiritual part of India, and they are studying spirituality combined with AI, and they're calling it ASI,
That's
artificial
fascinating.
superintelligence, which I think is
Yeah.
the US isn't in it yet, but Germany's backing them, Switzerland. Fascinating. But back to AI. So how how much can we depend upon that information if we're asking about our personal health?
Mhm. Mhm. I believe that AI is a very useful or it can be a very useful tool, but it's a tool and it needs to be used correctly. It's not it's not a doctor, it's not a dietitian. It doesn't always take everything into account when it's spitting out these recommendations, right? So I think where it can be really useful and where I've actually used it with clients is creating ideas based on information and recommendation that you have or that come from your health professional. What I mean by that is, let's say I'm working with a client who, we're focusing on, lowering A1C, lowering cholesterol levels and trying to kind of improve blood sugar control and that sort of thing. Right. And we have maybe they were recently diagnosed with diabetes or prediabetes, and um, we have kind of a carb goal for them. Right. If I give them that carb goal, and there's only so much meal planning and chatting we can kind of do in one weekly session, right? So let's say I'm, give them that carb goal to take home with them. Um, Putting that into AI and saying, I love these foods. I'm aiming for 60 grams of carbs with each meal. I don't like these foods. I'm trying to eat 4 smaller meals a day. I exercise at this time and I have coffee at this time. Like, if you are specific with it and feed it the information and say, like, give me a meal plan for this week. I want to meal prep 2 meals for lunch. AI can be really helpful. It can give you kind of a framework. Again, I would run it by your dietitian if this is how you're using it and just say, like, "Hey, does this look okay?" Um, or, and that sort of thing. But if it can be useful for ideas in that way. It's not perfect, so again, I would run it by, but
Mhm.
giving an idea of what things could look like, it's helpful. If you're looking at your fridge and you're someone that is trying to eat more from home and not go out to a restaurant as much, right? And you're like, I have ground turkey and I have a zucchini and I have brown rice and I don't that's it. Like, what types of meals can I make? It'll give you recipes to use what you have at home and give you inspiration. It can be really hard to think of different things to cook for yourself. Um, and that's kind of a good way
Mm.
too to use it. Make it work for you,
Mhm.
um, based
So
on
it's almost
in
like another supplement.
exactly, exactly. But you're giving it the information, like, you're doing the
Mhm.
thinking or your provider's doing the thinking, but it can work for you to kind of improve that. Um, and that's kind of where I think that it can be helpful. The last thing, I think in an age of social media being where a lot of nutrition information, right? There's a lot of wellness influencers, a lot of nutrition influencers, a lot of information. And with that comes a lot of misinformation. Um, it's a good tool for someone that does not work in the health field or does not work in nutrition, finding research articles that are, giving us the research, the up-to-date research and the latest and greatest on protein or on these different supplements or on processed foods, and just like sending that link or sending that article into AI and asking for a summary to break it down and give us a broken down version of the research where we should be focusing
Mm.
our
Mhm.
efforts, really, to prevent more misinformation. It's a really useful tool there too, to make it more digestible.
Very helpful. Thank you, and it's another perspective altogether that I think is good.
Mhm.
What is the difference between lifespan and health span? And is there a gap?
Yeah. Um, Lifespan, right? How long we're living. health span, I like to think of it as how well we're living. And I think that there is a gap, right? We are living longer because of we live in the age of, improved infection control and improved and constantly evolving medicine, and it's amazing, right? We are able to live much longer. With that said, there's also a recent rise in chronic diseases and chronic conditions that even though we're living longer, if we, develop a chronic condition at a younger age, we're spending more time with that chronic condition. So if we develop, diabetes at 60 years old, but we're living till we're 90, that's 30 years with this chronic condition. And depending on how you manage it, or, how you choose to kind of use lifestyle to, manage it, quite frankly, that will kind of influence your health span. So what I mean by that is you could
Yes, I
live,
do.
you could live that 30 years just not feeling well. So you're living longer, but you're not living feeling well. And so I think that it's really important that and this goes back to the question you asked about things that we do at a younger age to improve our, or think about ourselves 50 years from now, preventing the onset of those conditions as best as we can. Of course, there's a genetic component, and sometimes there's other environmental factors that are a little less in our control. But the things that we can control, movement, sleep, diet, stress, or how we manage stress, I guess is a better way to put it.
Mhm.
Those
It
things.
exists.
It does. Stress is out there. There's no taking away stress, but we can influence how we manage our stress.
Yes.
By doing those things younger, we can delay the onset of those chronic conditions, hopefully, again, as much as we can, and shrink that gap a little bit, right? We want to live as well as we can until, personally, I guess I should say, I want to live as well as I can. And when my wellness starts to go, at that point, it becomes, I'm more at peace with the end of life. But when
Right.
that gap starts to expand, that's not the case, right? We want to, live to, see our families grow and do all these things and finish out our career. And when that gap gets longer, it's just harder to kind of feel well for a longer time.
It's the same with my primary career, which is as a financial advisor. And
Mhm.
yes, we're living longer, but if we can't come up with plans for how we're going to afford to live longer,
Mhm.
then that that's as bad as or as difficult as not having the good health to enjoy those longer years. So
Exactly.
it's a three-way street, and it's
Mhm.
important to put. Do you think that you can reverse biological age?
Um, I I've gone back and forth on this, and I know that
Tell
there's
me.
conflicting information on this. Um, I think at a certain point, it turns into how we manage some of these conditions. We can't necessarily reverse the conditions themselves. Um, but there's kind of, so I like to think of like the difference between like prediabetes and diabetes. Like there
Okay.
is a point in prediabetes where you can kind of reverse that and bring that
Yes.
A1C down. When your A1C has got, or when your blood sugar, A1C meaning the average sugars for the last 3 months. So it's just a good indicator of like blood sugar control. Um, but when you get to a certain point, that damage maybe has been done. That's not to say we can't manage it. We can't, you know, prevent further damage. We can't live well and like I said, manage it. Um, I don't know if the research is there yet to show that it can be completely like reversed, right? It's
Mhm.
just not. However, And I guess that's why I harp on prevention. I think it really is more important that we prevent these things from occurring to the best of our ability and to the most that we can. Um, that being said, it's not that you can't live well if these chronic conditions have already established. That's not what I'm saying either, because you can. And like I said, changing lifestyle can make a world of a difference. Um, I guess it's just hard to say if biological age could truly be reversed. I don't think that I've seen enough yet where I
Right.
can confidently say yay or nay on that one.
Okay. I value that response very much. I'm thinking right now about pain management and how that can affect someone's ability to live with a condition that's difficult for them.
Mhm.
Humans have a great will to live.
Yeah.
I counseled terminally ill patients for 15 years. That was my first career as a therapist, and I will tell
Wow.
you that that will to live is the strongest I've ever seen.
Yeah.
So, I'm going to switch gears altogether and
Yeah.
ask you something that I'm curious about because I buy all organic food. Do you think
Absolutely.
that's hype or real?
Yeah, this is an interesting one. I get asked this a lot, um, with my clients, and I think it depends on a lot of things, and I'll expand on that a little bit.
Okay, just go for it.
So
I
what do
want to know.
you Yeah, yeah. What do you to you, like, what does organic mean to you or in general?
Well, I think what it means is that the soil, and we haven't talked about soil, which is where the food begins, but the
Yes.
soil is not treated with pesticides and dangerous chemicals, and neither is it sprayed on the food itself once it sprouts and grows, and
Mhm.
that the grain that the cows eat is healthy. I think organic means that the food as it grows from seed to production is protected. I look at it that way.
Great, and that's a
How'd I
great
do?
way to explain it. Yes. Right, so it's farming and processing the food without pesticides, fertilizers, added chemicals, essentially. Um, when you go to a grocery store and you look at a food label, there's a spectrum of organic. So you could see a label that says 100% organic, and that means that it's, exactly how you explained it, right? It's an organic product. Mostly that's going to happen from like fruits and vegetables, whole food items. There's also, so that's 100% organic. There's
Mhm.
also organic, which means that it's
Mm.
95% certified organic.
I didn't know that.
There's also made with organic ingredients, which is over 70% of certified organic ingredients. So 70% versus
Wow.
100 could be pretty significant. There's also organic ingredients, which is a little bit more arbitrary, right? They could have it could be like a loaf of bread and one type of flour in the bread is organic, and they could say organic ingredients. So I think it's important to first recognize that. Okay, so it's food labeling matters. Um, the other piece is, so in general, I really don't like to demonize food, because we also know that there's a lot of research that shows us that demonizing food groups or demonizing whole foods, that shame and guilt around nutrition choices, body health is actually really, really harmful too for our health, right? So I don't
Mhm.
like to say anything is, horrible or bad, but we do know that eating whole foods benefits our health more than ultra processed foods. But what I will say is that when something is not 100% organic, or when it says made with organic ingredients, it's considered a processed food, right? If it's processed. So this is kind of branching into a complex topic, but the reason that I bring that up is I recently was reading another like a study on whether organic food is beneficial, like improves our health outcomes, and kind of the correlations there. And I think it was from 2024, so it was a couple years old, but it's like the effects of organic food on health. And the organic food intake was found to have a beneficial impact in terms of reducing pesticide exposure, which is great. That's, what we want it to do. And also general effect on disease and functional changes in human health. It's not a correlation, it's not a causative relationship. Like it was kind of just a correlation. But what I think is interesting about this too is if you take 100% organic product or an organic product, it's most likely minimal ingredients, most likely, right? Think about, organic whole grain bread, right? It's probably from a bakery or from like the baked section, and it's got a few ingredients, organic ingredients, or an organic tomato versus non-organic foods. I mean, I don't know if you've ever heard of an organic Oreo or an organic, if that kind of makes sense. Like, I think that and I don't know if they're comparing apples to apples, but sometimes I'm curious if it's more of a correlation between the types of foods that we see that are labeled organic versus not that are impacting our health. So I just think there's a lot of factors to think about. And that's kind of my point for bringing all this up.
No, Maddie, I've never seen 100% organic on any label. I'm thinking about it. I see organic all the time, but not one.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know that we can mention labels, but what is 100% organic? What would that be? What food group would that be?
Yeah, I mean, again, it would have to be everything in the food, or the food itself is 100% organic, no pesticide, no nothing. I think that where we might see that most is, a farmer's market or, like a small organic grocery store. I just think that's most realistically where you would see that. That being said, I think it's important to highlight that that is not accessible to everyone, right? I mean, it's just not. So I think it can be harmful to say, like, we need to eat organic to be healthy, because it's just not true. And if we do that, people that don't have access to 100% organic food, it's like, okay, well, what am I supposed to eat? You know what I mean? So I think it's important that there are foods that we know of that are more important to, if you can get it organic, great. Because, like fruits and vegetables without a peel or with a lot of seeds and stuff like that. Strawberries, for example, if you've heard of the Dirty Dozen list, like those are foods that if we can have them organic, it is more beneficial. But like a banana, for example, where you take off the peel.
Right.
If it's a $3 difference between the organic and the non-organic bananas, and it's going to impact with, like, if you're not going to get the banana because the organic banana is expensive, like, get the regular banana. You're taking off the peel, and it's more beneficial for your health, in my opinion, to eat the banana. So I think it's just important that to recognize all those different factors, and prioritize it that way.
It's a good title of a book, Eat the Banana.
Eat the banana.
You touched on processed foods. Are there any processed foods which maybe are not good for you, but not harmful? Processed foods.
Yeah. So and this is also a spectrum. So I think this is important to bring to light too, right? Like, technically, we're thinking processed. Salt is processed. Hummus is processed. Flour is processed. These are all processed foods. Where the research shows us that, processed food is linked to chronic inflammation and disease, it's the ultra processed foods. So processed foods that are designed to be highly palatable, that are often stripped of more nutrients, like fiber, for example. Mentioned it a lot, but Americans don't eat enough fiber. So, always got to be pushing fiber. But all of that to say, right? Like, those types of foods, the ultra processed, right? Like, those are the ones that are maybe more linked, or that are more linked with those negative health outcomes. But again, I think like saying processed food is bad is kind of it creates fear around foods that aren't whole foods, and that's just not realistically what people can eat all the time. Like like I said, something like hummus at the grocery store is considered a processed food. But hummus is a high protein, high fiber, great way to build a balanced snack. It's quick, it's easy. Like that's a great thing that I would recommend to a lot of clients. Not everyone can go home and make hummus every day, right? So I think, again, it's a spectrum, and labeling a whole food group as bad is not beneficial in that case either. And that's kind of my take on that one.
I think that you're talking a lot. I think there's a theme that you have throughout this conversation that it's really about a balanced diet.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And we hear that, but you brought it home today, Maddie. I mean, it just, everything you are saying makes so much sense, especially the fear around food that some people have and struggle with, and it makes eating miserable for them. So I know that you work with people with eating disorders and that you've helped them a great deal. We're going to close. We're running out of time, but is there anything you'd like to say in summary? It's been a marvelous conversation. I thank you so much. It's been interesting and informative and exciting and humorous. So it's a great interview. I appreciate it very much. But I'm just wondering if there's anything you'd like to say to wrap up, any message that you have, any longevity superfoods that we should be eating. What's the big picture as far as where you are in the whole world of dietitians right now?
Absolutely. I think biggest takeaways, or biggest kind of take home messages of just where we kind of are in nutrition right now, what I see really, really frequently. Simplify where you can. There's a lot of noise. There's a lot of information out there. Kind of bring it back to the basics. Balanced meals, whole foods when you can. Pairing carbs, proteins, healthy fats, and fiber. Making sure that you're eating enough. If you feel yourself, craving salty, high-calorie foods at night, you're a snacker, right? You're likely not nourishing your body enough throughout the day. I think consistent nourishment throughout the day is really important. Balanced meals, and like I said, fiber. I think fiber. I honestly am not a huge, yes, I'm not a huge fan of superfoods, because again, I just think different foods serve different purposes for different people. It just depends on you. But one thing that we all need is more fiber. And something that's kind of hot right now is the trying to eat 30 plants a week. And I really like this because it harps the message home. 30 different types of plants every week, of fiber diversity.
I couldn't even name 30 plants.
But thinking about like nuts, seeds, grains, fruits, vegetables, these are all types of plants. They all bear fiber. Diversify that fiber, help that gut. It's good for your heart. It's good for your digestion. It's good for everything. So that's my take home message.
Okay. That's marvelous. Thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it. I learned a lot today, so I'm sure that everybody else has too. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks for joining me on Love and Money with Barbara Treadwell. I hope today's conversation gave you something to think about as you navigate your own financial and personal journey. You can also visit barbaratreadwell.com to learn more about my work and connect with me. See you on the next episode.
The views expressed in this podcast are not necessarily the opinions of Barbara Treadwell, LLC, and should not be construed directly or indirectly as an offer to buy or sell any securities or services mentioned herein. Unless otherwise specified, show guests are not securities licensed or affiliated with Barbara Treadwell, LLC, or Osaic Wealth. Investing is subject to risks, including loss of principal invested. Past performance is not a guarantee of future results. No strategy can assure profit nor protect against loss. Please note that individual situations can vary. Therefore, the information should only be relied upon when coordinated with individual professional advice. Securities and investment advisory services offered through Osaic Wealth Inc., member FINRA SIPC. Osaic Wealth is separately owned, and other entities and/or marketing names, products or services referenced here are independent of Osaic Wealth.